Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Tait Talks podcast. This is episode 22, part 2. It is the first two-parter that I have done. Last week, if you tuned in, I was chatting to Gaz. He is still here. We were speaking about his alcohol and drug addictions that he had faced at an early age. Then we were turning our views to AA. So yeah, we're just going to jump straight into pretty much AA today. I'm not trying to rhyme. Gaz, it's literally 2 minutes since we recorded part 1. Just a brief recap of what we chatted about. You started drinking at about 15. From the first time from drinking, you blacked out. From that point on, you pretty much thought about drinking. Probably, I would say, is a different point of view for most people that start drinking. You are actively trying to chase that feeling. When do I get to drink again? When is my first opportunity? When can I do this? So realistically, you went through all of that stuff of unfortunately hurting your family, committing a few crimes. You were actually, well, pretty much the turning point was you were nearly going to go to jail for drink driving because you've been done twice already, and then you got caught once more. You actually ran away from the police, and then they found. We didn't actually talk about it. So they ended up. They were going to put the lady whose car you drove, because it wasn't yours. They were going to find her, and then you decided to go. No, it was me. So you stood up and you were going to take the rap on the knuckles. You also spoke about talking to your family, and you were completely 100% honest with them, and dropped the bombshell that you were, in fact, also taking drugs and potentially going to jail. Mm-hmm. So pretty much, did you want to go from that point? Like, so you turned the corner in some aspect. You said that what was it? ADO? Or?
AOD, so alcohol and other drugs, is just the tag for those for the people that work in alcoholic and drug addiction rehabilitation or help.
Yeah, which you were seeing a lady.
Yeah, so Barwon Health, I was seeing, and this was the second time I went and saw someone. The first time that I actually tried to seek help was, it's a crazy thing that we do, but like seeking help because other people want us to, and to save face or put the fire out.
Try to do everything he can.
Yes,
he's trying to change, but you're just doing it
inside. You're not going. You're not internally saying, "I absolutely want to quit and I'm going to give it my best effort." You're like, "I'm doing this so I can put the fire out, and then I can work out what I need to work out, so I can continue to drink, but make it look like maybe that I'm not." Or make it look like I'm doing it less, and so. Lied to him, like flat out lied to him. I was trying to do that to save face with the family, and then to get a girlfriend back.
How can I ask how old you were around this
19.
time? 19.
I think I was not. Yeah, because that's when I was the first time I moved out of home. So it was either on the cusp at the end of being 18 or the start of being 19, somewhere around there, I would say.
Yep.
But then lying to him, only seeking help because other people wanted me to. I didn't really have a desire to stop, even though by then there was enough evidence in my life that I should live a sober life. And then this second time was, it's hard to put into words, but when you're honest and humble inside yourself, knowing that you're absolutely done and you're truly seeking help, that's a world of difference sometimes than half-assed or being half in, half out of seeking help. And so that was through Barwon Health. I think it was actually a free service as well, which was really cool. So grateful for them. And then she pretty much said, you need to get some extra help. So I recommend that you go to AA.
Okay.
And so at the time, knew nothing. Like when I say I knew nothing, is I have that, and I think we spoke about, is there any things that you want to debunk later on? And that's what I want to do, hopefully, through talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, is what we get from the movies and TV shows is people think that AA is group therapy, and it's just a bunch of drunks talking about the sad old days. And and that's all it is like it's just a bunch of drunks hanging out together talking about how bad it was, and then that's it, which it couldn't be further from the truth, but that's how it's portrayed in the movies.
Yeah, it's always in a movie, it's always they go into like a town hall-y type fucking shitty thing. There's all these shitty little seats. They go down, they eat their crappy donuts, they have their coffee, they're in a circle and so, hey, you're new here, tell us about this, and they're like, I don't want to speak, and then it's just that, and you're like, that looks terrible.
Yeah, and it's like, which we'll get into, like, is how crazy it is to think is like, from the regards of what I was talking about on last episode, is that I needed to change.
Yeah.
Simply sitting in a meeting and listening to other people talk isn't going to fundamentally change who I am and how I approach life and the life that I've been living. But so coming into AA, one, I thought I'd be rejected. The first meeting I went to was a talk in a Wednesday night. That meeting still meets, and there's people who were at my first meeting who are still in AA now, 7 years later.
Yeah.
And I give all the credit to those people in the program for the reason why I'm sober. And I thought it'd be old dudes, like that naive idea of what Alcoholics Anonymous is. That you have to be homeless, pretty much.
Yeah.
You pretty much all drink metho.
Yeah.
And you're all going to stink, and pretty much you might even still be drinking. I didn't even know. And I thought they were going to tell me to piss off. Like, what do you know about drinking being 23?
Yeah.
And then I rock up. There's a grandma in there who's been sober 20 years. She looked like a normal grandma.
Yeah.
There was dudes in their 40s, just looking normal dudes that looked like dads. I was pretty junior to everyone at the time. But just normal people in society who, once I started to hear their stories and what they shared about being alcoholics, but then the solution that AA offered in the life that they're living now through the 12 steps, blew me away. Like, when you get identification with the life that you've been living that you don't necessarily see so much in the lives of others or the people around you, it's crazy. We call it identification. So when I share, like, hopefully if there's any people listening today or tonight, whenever they listen to it, is they might go, oh, wow, I'm starting to identify with this dude, and he's saying he's an alcoholic and has the disease of alcoholism. Shit, maybe I've got that and I need to seek help. So we call that process identification. And right from the get-go, I identified with what they were talking about. Those things that I was talking about at the start, the two components, the mental component and the physical component, is they spoke about this phenomenon of craving, or this, this craving that starts once I start to drink alcohol. I'm like, that is, I've had that since I was 15.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That inquenchable thirst of every drink I've ever had, I've always wanted another drink.
Yeah.
Rarely does it's like my head is so rarely set in my life, that's enough, Gareth.
Yeah.
We better go home. It's like, that's not my experience of drinking and taking drugs. And then the other side, they talked about being sober and that they would be restless, irritable, and discontented, or it was too hard to do life sober, and that their mind would present them the option to have a drink to get a sense of ease and comfort. And I'm like, I understand that. I mean, I know being resentful at my boss at work, coming home and drinking out of spite or resentment, or going through hardship in life. What am I going to do? Get rid of all of that by drinking. Yeah. But then they also said the other two sides that I identified with so much is, that's pretty easy for people to think, and that's probably another myth, is it's only from turmoil in life that you go back to drinking. But where the disease kicks in is, it doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter if I've got the best life ever. You know what I mean? It's like my family is healthy and awesome. I'm progressing in all my endeavors in life. There's not a cloud on the horizon. There's no hardship in my life. Say I've got none of that. Is the fact that I'm an alcoholic and have the disease of alcoholism, my mind will lead me back to having a drink. It doesn't matter what's going on in my life, whether it's good or bad. It being bad, the illness will use that to bring you back, because it's easy. You're disturbed, have a drink. You deserve to have a drink. You've had a bad day, or your girlfriend left you, or this person died, or you got rained on at work, so you've had a tough day, go have a drink. But the thing that's more confusing for the alcoholic and other people around them is when there is nothing wrong. When there's no reason to drink, you're on a run of not drinking, and everything can be going well for a while. We're usually good at short stints, alcoholics. I know myself is I can get life to go well for a short stint. But then eventually, whether something's going wrong or not, my thinking will say, have a drink. And there's no reason for it. That will come. And so that's the second side, is no disturbance. There's no reason not to drink, and life can be on pretty good. My family can be sort of happy with me. The partner at the time can be sort of happy with me. I can be going well in life. My job can be looking good, maybe saving a bit of bank, whatever it is. Yet that time will come when the illness will kick in and say, it's a good idea to have a drink today.
Yeah.
And I cannot say no to that.
Yeah.
I can't fight that off for long enough. If I fight it off for one day, usually what I'd find is if I'd fight that off, however long I tried to fight off not drinking, when I did start, it's like now we're going to get good and stuck into this.
Yeah.
Because we delayed it for 3 days.
Okay. It just feels better.
And
maybe.
so it's crazy that when I first came to AA, people describing your experience, and you've been in this cycle for maybe for me it was like years and years of being in that cycle, and you hear other people talk about it and their attempts at trying to stop, and the systems and the games and trying to make it right, and all the ways that they tried to stop, and you're like, oh wow. I mean, it's like I'm not like in this position by myself. There's a whole other bunch of people. And that's what I actually learnt in my early days coming to AA, is that I don't just have a drinking problem or drug taking problem, is I have a disease called alcoholism.
Yeah.
And it's a disease. That's the thing. It's not just because I'm a weak-willed man and I have terrible morals that I drink. It's like I have a medical disease. And we learn about that when you go through the book. There's a doctor in the start of our book who writes, back in the 30s, this got written when we didn't know anything about alcoholism. We used to be called dipsomaniacs. And you could get locked up for what they called alcoholic insanity. Okay. So just the tragic things that happens with an alcoholic is back in the times they didn't know. They didn't see it as a disease. They're just like, you're a nutter.
Yeah.
You got bad morals and you're a weak-willed human. And so as it progressed and people saw us, it's like, this is a disease.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a mental component, there's a physical component to it. And that was sort of my journey in starting into AAs. It's like it opened up my eyes to, it's like, oh wow. I mean, I've been suffering from a disease that I didn't know that I had. And it's actually far more serious than, like, I could see the damages in my life, but the disease itself was far more serious than just the fact that I drank too much alcohol and I took drugs when I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Is that this thing affects me when I'm sober.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that needs to be addressed. So what are we going to do about that? If you can see that the problem centers in your mind, Gareth, and the fact is that this thing affects you when you're sober, you need a solution for when you're sober, not when you're drinking.
Yeah.
And that's a big eye-opener for myself when I came to AA, and for a lot of other people, is people think I'm simply going to put the drink down. But like I said in part one, what's going to happen? Well, I'm still a horse thief.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed there.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to, I'll probably become more conniving because I'm sober. So I'm probably going to find ways to be more conniving in stealing horses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you saying that. Like, the thing that, like, straight away that stuck with me is I always thought Alcoholics Anonymous was purely alcohol. Is that can you go there if you were a drug addict, or does it have to have an alcoholics a part of it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, cool. Yep, and that's the exact same question that you had, I had. And so what it is Alcoholics Anonymous is to help people recover from the disease of alcoholism.
Okay.
So within your disease of alcoholism, you can have other stuff going on.
Yep.
So you can be an alcoholic and have another mental issue. You can have another mental health issue.
Yep.
You can be an alcoholic and be a paraplegic. You can be an alcoholic and be black. You can be an alcoholic and be a woman. You can be alcoholic and any other thing.
Yeah.
But what the requirement is that you're an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Is that you have the disease of alcoholism. And so some people can be both, because there's such a strong crossover of the worlds of drugs and drug addiction and alcoholism.
Yeah.
So we've got the NA, that's another 12-step fellowship, Narcotics Anonymous. And so, but where the strength and the seat of AA is, which works, is one alcoholic can get through to another alcoholic. Okay. And another example is somebody trying to help a parent who lost a child from somebody who doesn't have children.
Yeah.
You could know the theory. You could be a very, like, it's an amazing thing. People who want to help other people, I put them in high esteem. But don't talk to a war veteran unless you're a war veteran.
Yeah.
Don't talk to a mother who's lost a child unless you're a mother who's lost a child. That's where the power of Alcoholics Anonymous is a person, not because of what they've learned in uni, and they're well-meaning people and we need them, but from a lived experience and the hell that we go through, we can get through to one another.
Yeah.
Whereas it just seems like family, friends, professional people, they just don't seem to be able to get through to us. Whereas another alcoholic who literally you watch, someone you don't know tells your story and uses words and phrases exactly as they are inside of you. How you think about your own life or where you've come is they say it exactly the words you have in your head.
Yeah.
It's a crazy experience to go through. And that's the gold, is one alcoholic can get through to another alcoholic.
Yep.
And so it's not is because there's all different 12-step fellowships, and it's important that like kind can get through to like kind. Okay. If you're a gambler, there's Gamblers Anonymous. One gambler can get through another gambler. If you're an addict, one addict can get through another addict. There's overeaters. One overeater can get through another overeater. If you're in Codependent Anonymous, there's like a million different 12-step fellowships. Is like kind can help liked kind.
Yeah.
And so the way that I see it with mine is that the progression of my alcoholism took me into taking drugs.
Okay.
That's where my alcoholism took me. And so other people, they might identify with both. They go, I'm an alcoholic and I'm a drug addict as well.
Yeah.
So some people are in both fellowships, which I can see can cause issues sometimes. I see dudes that are really solid. It's like staying really solid in one fellowship. Dudes can make it work, but I've seen issues with it over my short years. I've only been around recovery for 7 years.
Yeah.
And so I first went to NA, and just for me, is it when I went to AA, this is just my experience, is I felt at home in AA and realised that was my problem, is alcoholism, and the progression of it was my issue. Is I didn't identify so much as being a drug addict from what I was hearing in NA.
Yeah.
Even though it looks very similar. So I hope that answers that question, because it is, because a lot of people because most people nowadays, Tait, I know one dude who's under 30 who was just alcohol.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all the other people that I know, they're alcoholic, but they also dabbled in substances, some harder than others. It's not common now to find a dude who was purely alcohol and never touched any substance. That's pretty rare these days. Yeah. Just because of how prolific drugs are in our society, in our culture. Like nowadays, when I grew up, it was like weed was pretty easy to get, and you know what I mean. You might know of a distant dude who you thought was just like a low life drop kick who could get other drugs, but you wouldn't want to go near him. Yeah. And your introduction was maybe psychedelics and weed. Yeah. But nowadays, I know kids that have barely spent any time drinking, and their introduction is from drinking straight into ice, ketamine, and juice, or GHB. Yeah. Really heavy hitting drugs. And people are getting introduced to that in high school before they're leaving school, which is nuts. It's like, it's so, but then you talk about dudes that I know in AA that used to just drink. They're like, I would have done all this stuff. Just wasn't around. Yeah. They're like, I was drinking in the 70s and 80s. Was there still drugs in the 70s and 80s? Yes. Was it like it is now? Yeah. It's like, no, it's like at one stage, man, in Torquay, it was easier for me to get ice than weed. Jeez. And that's mental. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, that's crazy, but that's where we've progressed, is it's just like, that world, it's like, has just gotten worse and worse and worse and more prolific.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a worry if you're a parent or something like that and you needed to... Yeah, it's like anything these days. Like you can watch terrible videos online and it's in your pocket all the time. So yeah, it's pretty easy to stumble, I guess, in life if you do have those easy attractions or fucking... But what I wanted to say, like... You keep saying 12 steps.
Yes.
So is that a recognized 12 steps? Is like I the only one going from movies again. It's always like
go from
acceptance. I can't anger, denial, whatever which ways they go. But I couldn't get the 12. I know. There's always like 12 chips or whatever they say. And maybe that's an American term. That you get do you get? Is that a real thing?
It's not. It's just a thing that's in AA. The history behind them is really cool, and you know them. Is when I first came in, I thought the thing was like, I want to get my sobriety chip. So when you're real newcomer, you might get your 24-hour chip. Then there's 3 months, 6 months, and a year, and then it's yearly chips. So you get milestones. Like one of my friends over in the States is like 35 years sober, and he sent me from the States my 7-year chip. And like I love it. It's like it sits by my bedside table. I see it every single night before I go to bed. I love that thing.
But what is it? What is it? Like, is it like a poker chip?
It's just a medallion.
Okay.
It's just like a metal medallion. There's like ones that are just bronze that are pretty low key. It's got usually Roman numerals. So it'll be a 1 or a 2. It's always in Roman numerals. Yeah. And it'll have some sort of saying. On the back, it might have the serenity prayer. Okay. So it's just a prayer that we say after every AA meeting. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Okay. Like in Australia, in America, they've got a different prayer, but we say that at the end of every AA meeting in Australia. Yep. And then on the front, it might say, "To thine own self be true." That's a common saying, and it's another it's an expression of what humility is.
Yeah.
And so, but then you can get all gemmed up and dialed up. Like this one's on there for $1,500. No one has those. I've got a couple of really nice ones. It might be like $30 or $50, and they're really cool.
Where do you get them from?
Just like recovery emporium websites.
Oh, okay.
So they're usually, so there's stuff that's AA stuff, and then there's stuff that's still recovery stuff, but it's just done by other businesses and outside entities. And so sobriety chips, they're a cool thing, but it's nothing major in AA. They're just a cool thing to have. And so what it is so why I keep saying the 12 steps. So that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is a 12-step program of recovery.
Okay.
So the title of our book is actually called Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yep.
But when you're around recovery, you'll hear it called the Big Book.
Okay.
That's the nickname for it. And so in that program, and this is why I differentiate when I was before saying the difference just between coming to meetings and because this 12-step program is, when I was saying before, is that there's actions to take, a book to go through, and it shows us how to live a recovery-based way of life and to live a new way of life. And we can get into the different steps and what the steps are, but that's the big difference that I didn't realize, and a lot of people don't realize that the myth that I want to debunk is that there's a program of recovery that we get shown how to live. That's what AA offers as a treatment to alcoholism, and where you learn how to do that is in the meetings.
Okay.
So it's like what's another analogy? Another analogy is and that's where you get the results, is by living and taking the actions in the program. The analogy to the gym is you can go to the gym, physically go to the gym, but not do anything. That's like going to the meeting.
Okay.
And you need to get a personal trainer. That's a sponsor.
Yep.
So I sponsor men now because I've been through the program and I live the program as a way of life. And so, but where you'll start to get the results is you, not just by having the PT or going to the gym, you have to follow his program.
Okay.
So there's a program to get fit and strong for whatever the results that you want to get. And so that's the same in an AA, is you get a PT, which is a sponsor, someone who lives this program as a way of life and is a part of our own recovery. A big part of our recovery is trying to carry this message and pass it on to the next guy. That's a big part of how we stay sober.
Yeah.
And so I always love giving the analogy to the gym. It's really good because you can you could go to the gym and watch other people take the action. Yeah. You could know the theory. You could hear other PTs talk about the results that they've gotten. That's like going to a meeting. You go to a meeting to find out what you need to do, what are the actions you need to take in your life to recover, and you hear about the results. There's a lot of hope in AA meetings, but it's not until you get into the program and you start taking the actions will you start to get those results.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to. That's what needs to be debunked, but it's starting to happen. You know what I mean? I think Dexter and even Dan and my partner said, my fiance said, she's just watched The Sopranos. Is one of the dudes got a sponsor and started going through the steps, which is an accurate depiction of what AA is or 12-step fellowships are, because it's not just a mopey room about talking about the old days and it not working. Yeah, that's one part of the three. Like there's three sort of sections to a share. If you're following from the book that was written, Alcoholics Anonymous, it tells us how to share at meetings. Yeah. And it says we need to identify what the problem is. That's really important. I needed to identify and find out, wow, I don't just have a drinking problem. I have the disease of alcoholism. Okay. Who knew? Yeah. I was living it for maybe not 8 years, but the best part, maybe 4 years solid as an adult. I was definitely an alcoholic, had the disease of alcoholism, was in full flight. Didn't know. So that's the first part of the share. That's where you hear people talk about their experience of their alcoholism, like I was sharing about before, about my mental obsession and my physical allergy. Yeah. But then the second part of the share is, if you're coming to a place of help, you need to know in clear terms what you need to do. Yep. If you went to your PT and he goes, we're going to do leg extension, we're going to do Zercher squats, and you're like, what are you talking about? I don't know any of those words you've just said. And he goes, yeah, that's what you need to do. Is one, we need to know what to do and to be shown how to do it. Yeah. So that's the second part of the share. And the middle part of the share is, I had to get a sponsor. What's a sponsor? A recovered alcoholic who lives the 12-step program as a way of life, who shows me how to do that, if I care to have it. Yeah. So he offers me up for free. He goes, I'll show you how to do all this if you want it, Gareth. If you don't, cool. No worries. You can go at it by yourself like you've been doing your whole life, but the results you're probably going to get, brother, is you'll keep drinking and wreck your life.
Have you had the same sponsor the whole way?
once I got serious, I took the piss in my early recovery, which we'll get into.
Okay.
Just being classic Gareth, you can't tell me what to do. I'm going to run the show myself.
Yeah.
And just high ego, arrogance, ignorance, all the works.
Yeah.
And so it's like that middle part of the share is what we say is it's like I need to get a sponsor, another recovered member who's gone through the program and show me. It's usually done in a home group. So your home group is like your spiritual home base. That's the meeting that you go to every single week. That's usually that's where your sponsor's going to be. Usually going to meet your sponsor at your home group.
Yep.
And that's going to be like kind of your safe haven and spiritual home base for you in AA.
Yeah.
And then there's other stuff too. So what we call service commitment. So getting involved in helping to run the meeting and keep that AA group going.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to run an AA meeting and the broader AA. And then going to regular meetings as well, because it's very volatile in your early recovery. It's very easy to go back to drinking.
Yeah.
Very, very easy if you're not getting on point and throwing down with all the stuff that you need to.
Yeah.
And most alcoholics have the hard journey of coming. It's a crazy thing that we do as alcoholics, me myself included. I come to a place of help.
Yeah.
They say, this is the help. I say, no, thank you. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I keep busting. And then I come back and say, what was that help that you offered me? Because now I'm ready.
Yeah.
It's a sad and crazy thing that we see.
Is busting a term for you start drinking again? Yeah.
Sorry, just spilled water all over myself.
Yeah.
So busting or relapse or lapsing, whatever the term is that you want to use is, going back.
Okay.
So it's me drinking again or picking up a drug again or... Yeah.
Which must happen quite a bit at the start.
It's just the defiant nature that was in me, which is crazy. It's like we say another definition of insanity is coming to a 12-step fellowship and not doing the 12 steps.
Yeah, okay.
It's like another analogy. It's like going to the gym. You go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I want to get fit. Yeah, you tell the personal trainer, I want to get fit in the gym. Cool. Do you want to take these actions? Nah.
No, mate.
And then it's like, why am I not fit? Like it's literally that mad, and we get to see it in AA.
Yeah.
But I get to see both sides, and it's the same as within life is the people that I see that come in, get sponsors, get real serious, and they're able to take direction. That's the hardest thing to go.
Yeah.
Cool. I failed at life.
Yep.
I have to be shown how to live a new way of life, and I'm going to allow you to show me this. Is to realize is that I'm powerless over alcohol, and this is part of step 1. I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol. I cannot stop myself from going back to drinking. I've tried. I've deemed myself. I've done. I'm powerless. And the second line in step 1 is I admitted that my life was unmanageable.
Okay.
For me, that was obvious. In the end, it's like usually there's internal unmanagement, and then further enough progressed alcoholism, you'll see the externals. It's like can't hold a job down. It's like the finance stuff, the personal relationships, the harms that we're causing. All that stuff can come a bit later. And so dudes that I see that get serious, and women get serious right from the get-go, amazing results. You can come into AA, get a sponsor, get into the 12 steps, go to regular meetings, get a home group, get involved in some service, and they can never drink ever again for the rest of their lives. As a result, if they toe the line and they don't try and do it their way.
Yeah.
And it's such a funny thing that I saw in myself and I see in other alcoholics is wanting to dictate the help they get.
Yeah.
Which just saying that out loud is so mad. It's like trying to tell the doctor, no, this is how I want to go about my treatment.
Yeah.
Or the osteo, no, don't do it like that. Do it like this. When you don't even have you don't have a clue. Like what's my experience of me knowing how to recover from alcoholism? Zero. That's why I'm seeking help in Alcoholics Anonymous. I do not know how to live life successfully sober and to stop drinking.
Yeah.
It's like I failed at both those things, and that's what AA is there to help me to do. So the rough trot that I had was just simply being arrogant, having my hand up. It's like, I identify with you guys that I have alcoholism. I can't stop drinking. I'm powerless. I see all that. I'm ticking all those boxes, but I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it. And picked and choose what I did. Didn't want to fully listen to the sponsor. And lo and behold, what happened? I kept busting for 6 months.
Yeah.
And then the second moment, like we spoke about that big moment in part 1, about when it reached that place where I felt like the lights turned off, scared little boy in the dark. Woke up at my mate's place after the bust. It was such a non-event. I busted on weed, which can be a big trip for some dudes. It's like if you've done heavy drugs, it's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with weed.
Yep.
And they told me, if you don't stop smoking weed, you'll drink again. And I knew that I really didn't want to drink again. Kept smoking weed, busted again on the alcohol. That scared me. And then there was just the morning. I just woke up and I just went, I had a second experience of what they were talking about with this whole, because you hear the word powerless a lot, and it's like a strange word when you've never heard it before. And I'm like, this is what they're talking about, is because I saw that I was still smoking weed, and without doing the program and asking for their help, I was trying to stop that by myself as well, even though I was attending AA meetings. And I got to the point where I'm like, oh wow, this is what they're talking about. I cannot stop myself from either going back to drugs or alcohol the way that I'm doing it. So I'm fully ready to surrender to this program and go back to that man who's been trying to help me, who's been my sponsor for 7 years, and I still see him every week.
Did he know you kept on stuffing up?
They're not dumb. Yeah, okay. Alcohol. It's like you're not pulling the wool over the eyes of an alcoholic who's lived that life.
Yeah,
you can't, as they say, you can't bullshit a bullshitter.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, yeah, cool, we're waiting for you for you to shit the bed. And it's like, are you ready to accept help? Yep. Yeah. And then when that happened, there was just something that flicked in me that is recovering from alcoholism in AA became the single most important thing in my life.
Yeah. Okay.
And I went at it with I devoted myself to this 100% of just like the guidance that I was going to get, just whatever I needed to do to overcome this thing. It became my sole drive in my life. And it's just like, this is the most important, because I saw, and my family still knows that this today, is that my recovery needs to be the most important thing, because without it, the life that's been built on top of the foundation of my recovery will collapse.
Okay.
Because if I move away from recovery and I move away from the 12 steps and what I'm doing, and I go back, it's like I don't have a life to live.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why it needs to be the core and center of my life, which is recovery. And I'm grateful that I've got that attitude, because it's, I'm talking to you 7 years down the track, and I'm one different human from when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
But it's been a journey, and it's a common thing. But that's been my whole life, is you can't tell me, and then finally I was able to be told.
Yeah,
which is
so
a good thing. It sounds
like you've got to really for yourself experience it all, and then be like, all right, I'm not the best.
Yeah,
I need a little bit. I need some guidance, and then from the sounds of it, though, that once you've applied yourself and are going 100% into it, you are. This is what I want to do, so that must be a great feeling to know that where you've come from and now where you are, you must be like, I can do fucking anything.
It's
the right mindset.
The words that we use in we call it Big Book. I have to call it that because I'm so used to calling it that. But the title of the book's called Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's got our program in it. Is as time goes on, we say that it's indescribably wonderful. It's quite hard to put into words the change in which we go through and the way in which I see life today is. And one of them is the promise that I always give anywhere I speak I've done cool stuff like this before, but I do a lot of speaking in AA as well, is that when I first came to AA, the deal that I made with myself was, AA will probably get me sober, which I didn't know what that looked like, but I'm like, they'll probably get me sober. Cool. But I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life, and I'm going to want it. I'm going to have to fight off wanting it for the rest of my life. But that's okay, because that's the sacrifice. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, just dramatized alcoholic, that's the sacrifice I'm willing to make for my family and to move forward in life. But AA gave me this promise, is that as a result of living this 12-step program as a way of life, your obsession to drink and for me to substance will be removed.
Yeah.
And I thought that, I'm like, how is that possible? Yeah. It's like my thinking just in the last year, say the last 4 years, it's like I've been so obsessed about thinking about alcohol or drugs. Yeah. How could that be removed? But that's the promise that the program has got, like I said before, is you don't just need to sober up the horse thief. You need to get the man to the point that he no longer wants to steal horses. Yeah. And so the same for me is it's like the profound change that took place in the program is it reached that point where the obsession was removed. I no longer had the obsession. I was happy about it. And that was the beginning. Yeah. That's the thing that I learned in recovery, is that putting the drink down, sobriety, simply being sober, not so much the definition of sober, is one, soundness of mind, but if we do it in the regards to alcohol or drugs, is simply not having alcohol in your system, not drinking anymore was the beginning. Because what's left now is, how do I now do life sober and in sobriety and in recovery?
Yeah.
That was the most important thing moving forward. So how can I reconcile the relationships with my family? How can I have the recovery tools and the spiritual tools within the program to navigate life so I don't go back to where I came from, so I can continue to grow? And these are all the things that it takes a while to learn that when you come into AA, and we say, don't leave before the miracle happens, which can be a throwaway line sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's so true. I was talking to a sponsee yesterday. Is most people when they come to AA think this show is about not drinking, and then for some people not taking substances. But is what the program promises is a transformed life. And so is trying to put that into words, like where I come from is, it's like there was one time I was on the highway, and this is just one moment to express the gratitude that I have, and the place that I got to is I spent a lot of time in the car, which I loved. I listened to a lot of AA tapes. I'd speak to a lot of members, ask guidance. I'd help a lot of newcomers, spending hours and hours driving around back and forth from Torquay up to Melbourne, working and doing lots of AA stuff in Melbourne. And it dawned on me, I think it took me a couple of years, and I got to the point where I was just reflecting, and I told myself, I'm like, you're a good dude today.
Okay.
And it instantly made me cry. I just started crying on the highway because for so long in my life, that wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
And it wrecked me. And then actually years after that, anytime I'd have that thought, it's like, you're a pretty good dude today.
Yeah.
It would just make me cry. And I was just like, wow, this is as a result of the people that have helped me in AA in this 12-step program. But if you, I think the more apt, a better answer to the question is speak to my family. It's like speak to my mother, speak to my sister, and they'll give you a better description of the change that they've seen that's taken place. And is another example I always like to give is, which I never would have got this if I merely put the drink down, is the reconciliation and the amends, which is a part of which is within the program.
Yeah.
What I made with my family is I had a father who stopped talking to me, and in the depths of my selfishness within my disease of alcoholism is I didn't even know. I was living in a home with him, and I didn't know that he stopped talking to me. My sister wrote me off as a person and as a brother, and in her words, she goes, I hated your guts for probably 4 years. Strong wording to come from a family member. And the pain that I put on my mother, she said, every time you went missing, which was every single week, she goes, I thought the police were going to knock on the door and say, your son's gone to jail for a very long period of time, or we've found your son dead. I put that strain and harm on my mother 52 weeks a year for 4 years. That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And it's like nowadays is, as a result of this program, is I got to live with my sister in my early recovery for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was able to fully reconcile that relationship when we got to be as close as a brother and sister can get. We lived every aspect of our lives together. We worked together, we surfed together, we shopped together, we're crazy into health together, we're doing everything together, which was amazing. And my father, who stopped talking to me, is it's like now is every time I see my dad, I hug him and I tell him I love him, and he tells me that he loves me back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I would not have got that if simply this whole show was just about not drinking. It's like what AA offers is it offers me a new way of life, and as a result of living a new way of life, I get to turn into a new man.
Yeah.
I'm not a polished up turd. I'm a new man today.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And so I can talk about that at length, but that's just a little example or a brief touch of is that why I'm so dedicated to Alcoholics Anonymous, and is what it's given me is why it's like, one, I love the results, but two is now I'm at this place where it's like, how could I not give back to AA from everything that's been given me?
Yeah.
And I just want that for others. Dudes are in the same position where they've brought their life to a hole, or what we call a bottom, and they can't see a way out, and we've got one. We've got a way out for people in Alcoholics Anonymous if they're willing to take pain, if they're willing to stop doing it their own way, and if they're willing to take some guidance and take some actions that seem a bit strange at the start.
Yeah.
That's what we can offer in AA.
Yeah. I know you've touched on the first step, and I know we could go in depth for hours and hours and hours, but what are the 12 steps? Like just the abridged version, I should say.
So abridged version is it's like the word, you hear me, I repeat the same wordings over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much, Well, to use the words of Bill Wilson in the preface of one of our books, it says the 12 steps are spiritual in nature, and if practiced as a way of life, can enable the sufferer, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole.
Yeah.
So, and then to go into that a little bit more is it's pretty much a program of showing us that our way of life didn't work. Mm-hmm. And we get shown how, like, our defects of character is a big thing. It's a wording that we use, but it's really to see how, put the drink question aside, the fact that you drink too much. It's like, how you going managing life, you running the show. We call it self-will. You being the director, you being the god of your own life. How well is that? It's like, well, there's a step we go through and we look at our harms that we've caused, and it's like, I've caused a lot of harms pretty much everywhere I've gone as a result of me running the show.
Yeah.
And so it's like we get to see that the way in which we've been living life wasn't working. And so we get to see that with certain steps, and then we get shown a new way of going about life, new tools and recovery tools about going about life. And one of them is, and you would have heard me say the word spiritual, which is going from step 1 and 2 is what we realize the reason why we call AA a spiritual program. And this is where it gets confusing for people and me when I came in, I was an atheist, is the reason why it's called a spiritual program. We actually stem from a Christian group back in the day.
Okay.
And so what step 1 shows us, and then we go to step 2, is that if by yourself, if you can't stop your drinking, if you can't correct your life by yourself, and you don't have the power to do that, you're going to need to plug into a new power source to do that.
Yeah.
So we're talking with the terms that we use the word God, we use the word higher power, we use the term power greater than ourselves. And so it's a strange concept to come into when we first come into AA, but how it helped me is realizing that I needed a God, a concept of God or a power source that I could plug into that could help change my life.
Yeah.
And so there's no description of what God is or who it is or your relationship to it, which is all very strange the first time you hear it. But the simple understanding is, if you don't have the power to change yourself, you're going to need to get a power to help you to change. And that's the simplest way that I can put it. And so the reason why we say it's a spiritual way of life is because that's it. It's like, I understand today, I use the word God, that doesn't bother me, is I haven't changed myself. It's as a result of going through this program and taking the actions and clearing away the blockage of all that stuff in the past and all the defects of character that I used to live in, how I used to react to the world and my resentments and my fears, and how I used to behave. It shows me how I can live a spiritual or godly way of life now through the program.
Yeah.
And with God's help, I can change.
Okay.
And so that's, for me, is I find it quite hard to sum that up in a short way. Yeah. There's like a kind of a bigger conversation that needs to have around it, and you'll hear a lot of members that will say that it's like, as a result of forming a relationship with a higher power or a God that I don't fully understand, I just know that I need a God or a power source. That's the thing that's changed my life.
Yeah,
and that's like the core of my recovery in my life today, is knowing that I say to my mum, I laugh, I'm like, I'm forced to live a spiritual and good way of life, because if I don't, I'm going back to a drink. Yeah. It's like to live by principles and virtue, and to admit fault and to make amends. And we've got the process of what we call inventory is one of the steps, which is we just look at how we've been conducting ourselves in the world, and we look at our resentments and our anger and our hatred towards life, and also our fears, and we go into our personal relationships, and how we conduct ourselves, how are we acting, and we see what the real cause of that is and how to grow through that with forming this relationship with God or a higher power, whatever it is that you want to call it. It just shows us pretty much how to live a completely different way of life using those tools. So it's like forming a relationship with God through prayer and meditation, is going through an inventory process to see where we keep falling short in our actions and how to correct that, making amends or reconciliation with the past, fixing those harms that we've done from the past, and then continuing to do this. So the tools that we learn, doing inventory, and if we need to make amends again or admitting faults is a big part of it. If I fall short, I've got... if it's like I've made plenty of mistakes in recovery, and we admit those faults to each other so we can keep clear and to keep moving forward, so we don't bank up any baggage that can block us off spiritually it can possibly head us back to a drink. And then the last part of the program is carrying this message like I'm doing today. This is a part of my program, or helping other men go through the 12-step program.
Yeah.
That's like one of my main actions that I take in order to stay recovery fit, or what we say spiritually fit, in order to stay out in front of alcoholism. Because the way that we see it in AA is that we're not cured. It's not like, here's your certificate, you've passed AA, you're free. Like type 1 diabetes. Is there a treatment for type 1 diabetes? Yes. There's a wonderful treatment plan, but there's a certain way of life you have to live being a type 1 diabetic. You have to check your levels. There's insulin you have to take. There's a certain way of eating, exercise. You have to plan. So it's like there's a certain way of life you can live. You can be happy and healthy being a type 1 diabetic, but your treatment is there's a certain way of life that you have to live, and then there's medicine. And so the same as with an alcoholic in AA is there's a certain way of life that we have to live, and we get taught that through the 12 steps. And I see my medicine is my 12 steps. And so as long as I live that as a way of life, I'll be fine. But just like the type 1 diabetic, if they start eating how they shouldn't, if they stop taking insulin every day, you are headed for trouble.
Yeah.
And the same for the alcoholic.
Okay. So there
was a bit there to digest. Yeah. There was a bit.
So you, with the Alcoholics Anonymous though, you've said you're a sponsor now yourself.
Yep.
How often are you actually going to those type of meetings and chatting to people and all this type of stuff? Like how often are you there?
Yep. So in the early days is depending where you're at. So I was not kicking any goals when I came in. I was on the dole, didn't have a job, back at what we call mummy and daddy daycare or mummy and daddy rehab.
Yeah.
So my parents took me back. And so my life was a sum zero.
Yeah.
So I was able to I was going to meetings every day.
Okay.
Just involved every day. Now where I'm at now, that's not the case, but I go to 3 meetings a week now.
Yep.
I go to my home groups in Melbourne, a men's group, really strong group, The Deal.
Yeah.
We meet on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then we got a second meeting on Wednesdays where we meet at 7. And then I also go to the Torquay meeting. And then because of COVID, we got Zoom meetings, online meetings. So there's a meeting that we started in Collingwood, which I go to as well. So 3 meetings a week, but we speak to each other every day.
Yeah.
So I'm just checking in with dudes out in front, and so there's different parts of our program. If I need to do inventory, or if I'm seeking guidance on sponsorship, or I'm going through, so now I'm engaged and I'm setting up for a wedding.
Okay.
So my new sort of guidance is, how do I work this program and be a spiritual dude and follow all these principles I'm learning in a marriage?
Yeah.
Because there's dudes that are the same as me, came in with nothing, lived the program, got kids and a family now, so they're able to live their 12-step program, and they're able to give me practical advice on how to live the program in that area of my life. So I'm checking in with the older sober members of my sponsor, but then I got a lot of sponsees as well. So dudes, because it's the earlier in recovery, there's issues. There's the daily issues that are coming up, and all the stuff, and the thoughts of drinking and dropping the ball and getting into pain. And so we have close guidance of each other on a daily basis. The home group that I'm a part of is really solid.
Yeah.
I absolutely love those men. And so just because the nature of the illness is it's very volatile, is most alcoholics don't recover. That's the sad thing about alcoholism across the board. Most alcoholics will die from the disease drinking. Ooh. It's quite sad. And so it's quite critical and quite intense what you need, like in early recovery. And so, like myself, I had to learn the hard way. Took the piss. Don't tell me. I got this covered. I'm the Gaz man. I'm not the Gaz man. I'm just, I got smashed for 6 months and taking the piss out of. I say nowadays, I took the piss out of my disease, and my disease took the piss out of me. I didn't treat alcoholism with the respect that it deserved, and didn't match it with the actions I needed to take in my recovery, and it whooped my ass. And so we understand in early recovery, it's just like that daily stuff is super important. But I wouldn't. I love it, man.
What would they ask you? What would the general, just a couple of questions?
So all sorts of questions, like what I've just dropped to you. What do you mean that it's a spiritual program?
Okay.
Why? What do you mean God? What's this thing got to do with God and seeking a power source? What's powerlessness? I don't think I'm unmanageable. or if they've been around in the program a while, is they start to see that the way in which they're reacting to the world's wrong. I want to go, they ring you up at lunchtime and say, I want to tell the boss to fuck off. And you're like, okay, what's going on? And he's like, so he's just asking you whether you've done the job that you're supposed to do, and you've been a bit slow on it. So you start to see, it's like you help them, you start to help them to see it's like the way that they're reacting to the world's wrong, and help to guide them to take better actions in their day.
Yep.
So yeah, and then once you learn the tools, like we'll do inventory with each other a lot. So it's like I'm resentful at my girlfriend because she keeps telling me that I leave stuff around the house. So we'll do inventory on that to see how your resentment is wrong, because you're resenting your girlfriend because she's telling you to do something that you should be doing.
Yeah.
And so the tool to get out of that resentment is, we go through the process. In the end, you'll see it's like, well, you're being selfish and inconsiderate and dishonest. You're expecting your girlfriend to tell you to do something that you should be doing.
Yeah.
So you're expecting her not to do that. That's dishonest. And you're being selfish and inconsiderate because you're not taking the actions in the house that you should be taking.
Yeah.
So it's like, ask God for help, pray for your defects to be removed, and go back in and do the dishes and tell your girlfriend that you love her. You know what I mean? And so like you'll guide dudes through stuff like that. And then over time it's like...
I wouldn't have thought it went to that level. Well, I thought it was like, don't drink, dummy.
Yeah.
But not like, from the point of being like, it goes to everything, to like decisions you're making at home, not to do with drinking, just to be generally a good person. And, it's pretty...
Which is the same as me, and that's why I kept coming back to is the funny story about the sober horse thief. You sober him up. You can't just tell him to stop stealing horses. How does the man transform into a place where he no longer wants to steal horses? You would know yourself is you can't merely tell someone to do something or not do something. That's not how you change.
Yeah.
And so the process that we go through, like with that stuff, is if I'm living an unmanageable life and I'm selfish and I'm self-centered and I react to the world and I get resentful, and I think that I'm always right, which is, man, that's a bad trap. If you're 19 years old and you think everything that you think is right and the way you see the world's right,
it'd be fun.
My grand sponsor taught me this. He goes, it's amazing. We come in as know-it-alls, and it's amazing how much you can learn after you know it all.
Yeah.
And that's been my journey in recovery is growing in realizing it's like far out. It's like I had so many things wrong.
Yeah.
How I thought about my parents, how I thought I should run my life, how I acted in the world. Always, it's like always judging and comparing and thinking that others are wrong and that I'm right.
Yeah.
And it's just been a big journey of like, you've had that wrong, Gareth.
Yeah.
And this is another way of looking at things, or this is a spiritual way of looking at things. And it's just a beautiful thing that we've learned in the program, because that's that stuff, that underlying unmanageability. What AA taught me and what I believe today is if that's not addressed. You know what I mean? If it's like, if that's not addressed, my own unmanageability, and I don't change from that state from when I first came into AA, or I revert back to it, it's like I'm eventually going to go back to a drink if I don't stay out in front of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's another way of seeing it. The analogy for the gym's so good is no one's. It's like if you stop doing the personal training, you stop going to the gym, and you move away from, what's going to happen? You're going to be less strong. You're going to be less fit. You're probably going to put on some weight. Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that. It's like, how do you stay fit and strong your whole life? Well, you exercise. You exercise and you work, but within it too, you have to grow.
Yeah.
So if me and you, if we started running and we ran 2Ks, and I'd probably be wrecked after 2Ks because I don't run, I can't just run 2Ks at the same pace at the same time for the rest of my life. I have to grow and maintain.
Yeah.
And so that's the same as within the program of recovery. It's like it's a continual journey of growth and maintaining where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, if I knew what I knew my first 6 months now, it's like, well, I failed. I should learn and become more effective and grow in understanding and be more helpful to people as I grow in the years. Because that's the natural progression. That's how it's supposed to be. We're meant to become more effective as men as we grow in the world, and hopefully my understanding has grown about my disease and what the solution is that's offered in AA.
It certainly sounds like it has.
I hope.
I mean, you're going from that rat bag to actually having was it sponsees?
Yeah.
That's it's pretty crazy to think that you're the person now that they're kind of looking up to and stuff. It must be pretty. It's a different feeling, I guess. Was it weird the very first time you got the first sponsor you got, where you're like, I think this is right.
It's like this is a perfect example, like we were talking about before, that Alcoholics Anonymous is for alcoholics.
Yeah.
Is I was sponsoring an addict and he wasn't an alcoholic, and it didn't work. It really didn't work because he wasn't identifying with any of the stuff, and I was trying to take him through the work. But even though he didn't stay, and I don't even know if he's sober anymore, I don't even know if he's in a 12-step fellowship, this is what our co-founder learned, is just by the mere fact of us trying to help other alcoholics, whether they get it or not, or get on board or follow directions, is us being focused on others and not ourselves.
Yeah.
That's like such an important spiritual tool and approach that we've got to life, because such a big problem with us alcoholics is we're so obsessed with self, thinking about ourselves. We're selfish, we're self-centered, we get into self-pity. We can want for ourselves. It's just us, self.
Yep.
And so the antidote to self is helping others. With God's help. And so is writing on the wall. People are like, Gaz, this dude's not even alcoholic. Let him go. And I'm like, no, I'm going to get this dude sober. And because what we say in AA is, it's like, I'm not the one getting you sober. You know what I mean? I know today is that my sponsor didn't get me sober. It's like forming a relationship with God through the 12 steps and plugging into that power source. I know that God's changed my life today, but people showed me how that could take place. My sponsor showed me how the actions to take, the tools to use, how to live this as a way of life, how to ask for help. And so you'll talk to anyone, like I'll thank my sponsor, he'll probably thank his sponsor and God. And then I thank my grand sponsor who's been helping me for 7 years. He goes, oh, it's not me. I got the help from somebody else, and it came from, you know what I mean? It's like...
He's paying it forward.
And then it's like, because we say, he's like, we all know by ourselves, we all come in, we're powerless. Not a single alcoholic who's in AA was able to overcome with their own power the ability to stop drinking or to straighten out their life. But all of them say, I was able to form a relationship with this concept of a God. I don't even know what that concept is when you first come in, but just knowing that I needed something, I needed a power source to help guide my life. And as you continue to grow, people form a stronger relationship with God and their understanding of. But it's an amazing thing to see. Is it's like, because a lot of people say, oh, you're the one who took the actions. It's like, yep, I needed to take the actions, but I'm not taking the credit for it. Because by myself, me trying to stop, like before AA, I tried to stop by myself. I tried to come up with my own system, tried to come up with my own plan, I tried to do it myself in AA. You know what I mean? And it didn't work. It really didn't work. And so when you see it's like, did my ego get jacked in the early days? Of course. It came in as an ego maniac. You know what I mean? I was just obsessed with myself and how others thought of me and my reputation and all that stuff. So has there been a slow journey of humility with that? And I would barely say that I've grown much in humility. But you take 50% of the claim and go, 50%'s God and everybody else, you know what I mean, at the start, but I really helped this dude. And you grow more and more to go, I'm just a conduit for this stuff. I'm merely showing this dude how I live this way of life. And if he wants it, cool. If he doesn't, that's cool too. If he ever wants my help, I'm here. And I merely show him the actions that I continue to take or that I took in my early recovery. And he either wants it or he doesn't. But it's amazing. I mean, I see dudes, like when you watch dudes come in who have nothing, same place that I come into, and I've got a bunch of dudes that I'm running with now. There's 5 of us at our home group. And I'll probably send them this stuff so they can listen to it, so they know who they are. And 4 of us, I think, didn't have jobs, didn't have girlfriends, no prosperity or outlook on, like no even thoughts of I'm going to live a good life. There was nothing in the future that we're looking towards now. I just came back from my mate's first AA wedding. 2 of us are engaged. 1 of them's having a kid. A couple of us have got houses. That's the external stuff. We go, that's cool. But it's like the usefulness of the men that we are in the people's lives that we're in. It's like we're good sons, we're good brothers, you know what I mean? We're good partners, we're solid men in AA who have truly, this is just how I see it, it's like God has just blessed me with an attitude that I have most of the time is just how much I want to help other alcoholics is ridiculous. Because I've just become from such a selfish way of life before, only thinking about myself. And by no means do I classify myself as not being selfish. I've got much growth to do but that's the change that's taken place in me, is in the enthusiasm of helping other people with this program. Then I see with these other dudes that came in too, just lost, retarded men. They're boys. They weren't men. They weren't living by any strong principle or virtue. And then to watch them grow and then watch other sponsees, you know what I mean, is to watch your sponsees then start sponsoring other dudes. And the lineage is really strong of of sponsorship.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. It's like, as we say, this show is so much more about not drinking. It's like AA, the term we use, we call it a spiritual awakening, which is just a transformed life.
Yeah.
You being changed. I no longer want to steal horses. And the fact of not just stealing horses, I want to help other men not steal horses.
Yeah.
That's the transformation that we've gone through.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's soul nourishing, that stuff. You know what I mean? Is just like, if I'm driving and I just think about dudes or men that you help and you get them back on board, even though I know that I'm not the power source getting them sober, just being thanked. And it went through it with a sponsee. He actually rang me. I'm going to call him on the way home. We've got to do some step work together because he got a bit squirrely, and I just pulled him up on some stuff, and it's like, these are actions you're not taking. Let's go through it. Let's do some inventory tomorrow. And then it's like, you can see dudes that take the same guidance that you got and get really good results in their life. You know what I mean? So it's like you get them to actually be loving men that can show up in their relationships rather than living in resentment and blaming their missus and being angry at the missus. You can see them show up as strong men in those relationships. It's incredible. I can talk about it all day.
Yeah. We're getting to the end of it. The last thing I kind of wanted to touch on, and it's something that you've been through. So what if there is someone who's listening to this podcast today and they fear that brother, sister, even close friend, workmate, whatever it may be, just someone in their life, they fear maybe heading towards an addiction, be a rather alcoholic or fucking whatever, how would you say to those people to confront the person, or what do you do? Like, I have no idea. Say if one of my mates is, I saw him drinking a bottle of vodka each week, whatever it may be, and I'm like, how do I say that I'm here for them? Or, you know, what would you have liked to happen, you know?
Yeah, this is the criminal thing that I have to tell families and friends is, it's very, very hard to get through an alcoholic who doesn't see it as a problem or doesn't want to stop themselves.
Yeah.
In my example, it was virtually impossible. The well-concerning people is I became resentful at people trying to help me.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Which is really hard. So the first question is, have they expressed a desire to stop drinking?
Yeah.
Or have you? And then if they they don't see a problem. I was just helping a lady in the church this week. She because my pastor, my father, the priest in the church, knows that I'm in AA, and he said, "Oh, can you speak to this woman?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And so he hasn't expressed that he wants to stop. Okay. And so I said, "Cool." There's another fellowship called Al-Anon, which helps friends and family who have been affected by people who've been really affected by other people's alcoholism. Is they've got their own 12-step program, where they can get free from the harms and they can know how to navigate living with an alcoholic in their life. Yeah. So I would, family and friends, one, I'd strongly recommend checking out Al-Anon. Yeah. And I'm even happy to. I will directly speak to anybody who listens to this podcast. I'm willing to directly speak to every single one of those people who wants. If they want to chat to me, I'm more than happy to chat to them. Whether that's up in your description, I don't know how you want to do it that aligns with the whole.
They can contact me and then I can get them to contact you.
Cool, absolutely, yeah, it's easy done. So just contact Tait through the podcast stuff, the emails or the whatever.
Instagram, Tait Talks Podcast.
All of it, go to that. And so I will directly speak to you or even meet up with you. I can go. I know people who are in Al-Anon that can help. And then as for any alcoholics or people that are listening, is same again, get in contact with Tait, come and speak to me, or is the hardest thing can be is it's just go to your first AA meeting. If you're local, if you're listening to this meeting, you're local, come to Torquay on a Wednesday night. Yeah. Look up AA online. You can go on aamelbourne.org.au. Don't worry that it has Melbourne in it. That has every single meeting in Victoria and Melbourne. There's another website, aatimes.org.au. Type in where you live and you can get to your first meeting. If you want to come to a meeting that I'm going to go to is Wednesday night at 7:30. We meet at the corner of Price and Pride, I think it is. I can't even remember. The church that's on the corner there, just sort of at the back of IGA, just off the Esplanade. We meet at 7:30s every single Wednesday, so I'll be there. Yeah. But yeah, reach out for help. There's an AA hotline. You can speak to another alcoholic member on the line. If you're not sure, you can ask some questions. Come along to a meeting and check it out. But definitely is that if you go through Tait, I'm willing to speak to anybody who wants help.
You've heard it. If you want to,
if you want it,
that's the
main
thing. Is there anything you wanted to add? Any myths you really need to debunk, or I think you've done it, to be honest, just naturally chatting about it. But is there anything you really wanted to add before we sign out?
No, I think just reiterating what I've already said is a lot of people don't see that there's a way out.
Yeah.
So there might be someone listening here who's what we call the jumping off place, is cannot see a way out. They've tried to stop by themselves, and the jumping off point is suicide.
Okay.
I know I've got a lot of friends that came in Alcoholics Anonymous off the back end of a suicide attempt, and that's a very real situation for people, is can't live without alcohol, can't live with it, and they don't see, they're in that dilemma of it can't work. Life by itself is too unbearable. I can't do it. I always go back to drinking. And it's like I can't keep drinking because it's wrecking my life.
Yeah.
And so I just really want people to know, it doesn't matter what scale you might be at, there's different, you can slide down the scale very far. Not everybody drinks methylated spirits and becomes homeless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For you to be an alcoholic with the disease of alcoholism. But if you have been thinking about it and you're not sure that there's a way out, Alcoholics Anonymous can help 100%. There is a 12-step program. There's actions to take. There's pain to take. But we can help. And if you're local, I can directly help you.
Well, you've heard it here. Thank you so much for bearing your soul. It has been really eye-opening, to be honest, because it's just not the world that I live in, which is good, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's pretty great that you can openly talk about it and help people, which is the amazing part. Like, it's really it's like I knew you were back in these days when you were a rat bag, so you've come a fair way. I think. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Awesome, man. So awesome. Love what you're doing, man.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been part 2 of episode 22. I have no idea who's on the podcast next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, guys. Goodbye.